So I want to explain to you why I've asked for Joyce Craig to resign. I don't think she should be the only one that steps off that board, to be honest with you. We've seen little leadership from the board and no ideas come forward. But that's not why I asked her to resign. When I ran against Joyce twice before, we stood on debate stages where I talked about how our trails were no longer safe and that there were needles in the parks and that people were really concerned. Businesses downtown were concerned about the safety of their customers. They were concerned about the safety of their staff. People were sending me pictures of feces in front of their doors, needles in front of their doors, and other things in front of their doors that they had to deal with before they even opened for business. And when I would speak about these things, because I value all of you and the information that you give me, you allow me to be your voice. And I usually check with people before I tell their stories for them. So when I would tell these stories on the stage, in debates, in interviews, in op-eds, Joyce always kicked back, along with Chairman Buckley for the New Hampshire Democrats and their other colleagues, and tell me that I was making it up. I was just negative. The chairman of the New Hampshire Dems calls me Negative Nelly. That I was an alarmist, that this wasn't true. I was saying things to put Manchester in a bad light. When Joyce Craig ran against Ted Gatsas, the first time, I think, because she ran against him twice, I think the first time, she stated in an MUR, she had like 3 minutes to speak on MUR. It wasn't an interview. She stated in that monologue that she had that Manchester was now known more for its struggles versus its success. And I will say that we are so far beyond that now. Where we were before she took office was a much better, stronger Manchester than we are now. Now almost every conversation in this city is surrounded by what's happening with the homeless and opioid epidemic and mental illness and the crime and innocent people being attacked and people's homes being broken into. And this is all because of her failed leadership. Still not why I asked her to resign. I asked her to resign because while we stood on those debate stages and I warned people that the trails and the parks weren't safe, she pushed back on me and said that they were. She told people that the trails were safe for their children to be in. She told you, and the New Hampshire Democrats told you, that the city was safe and the trails were safe. Daniel Whitmore, a 75-year-old veteran who lives in my neighborhood, in my ward, was walking in those trails one day, his morning walk, and he was stabbed to death in the trails. All he did was go for a walk. Children use those trails to get to the ballpark. Those trails lead down to the ball field and soccer fields. Her lies and deception led to a man dying, and he's not the only one. Her ignoring the fact that we have a huge homeless issue where people are dying. You heard about the mom that gave birth in the tent and left her baby to die. Luckily, the baby received care in time. You heard Christmas about the woman that died in the tent. That is a small fraction of what's actually happening out there and the people that are dying. Small. And then that's not the first stabbing we had in these trails. We had an armed robber that was arrested in these trails. Her deception led to people dying. Her deception endangered children. Her deception and inability to face what's happening in this city makes her incapable of leading. And she needs to resign for the safety and the sake of our citizens. And I say that with all sincerity, and it's not political posturing. It's because she lied and she deceived, along with the other members of her party that helped her get reelected and hid the growing homelessness, skewed the crime statistics. and embellished on some of the things that were happening here that hid how sad the city was and how people were hurting. She should also resign with other members of the board because they lied to you about honoring the tax cap, respecting the tax cap. They raised your taxes as soon as they got in there. And these increased taxes are leading to more homelessness. Financial instability leads to more addiction. And all of these decisions are on her and the board that she leads. The other night was an embarrassing night for our city. Business owner after business owner came out and spoke to the board and said how tough things have been on them. How some of them couldn't even access their door. One man had to clean up blood from a stabbing that happened the night before. And it got some press and it got some news. And it's not the first time in the last few months that we have made national headlines for the wrong reasons. I want to stress that there's some really great things happening in this city, especially down in the mills with technology and biotech. There's some amazing things happening in this city that are completely overshadowed by the constant crime, lives lost on the street, and the deception that caused all of it. That's why I asked for her to resign, and I stand by it. And I know it makes people uncomfortable when I go to meetings and I look at her and I tell her to resign. I could feel it in the room. The business owners that were there were uncomfortable with it. People like me are living it on a daily basis. We're living it. So I know it might seem harsh to you or unprofessional to you that I came out and demanded that. And I understand it makes people uncomfortable. I understand. But what makes me really uncomfortable is hearing the stories from the people that live in my ward saying that we had 2 cars stolen this weekend. That a person was threatened in their front yard by a woman with a knife that they didn't know. That people are having their homes walked into and ransacked. That's uncomfortable for me. And you tend to do things when you're finally so uncomfortable that you can't stand the status quo, which is why the businesses came out to speak. And I'm glad that they did, and I'm glad that they were heard. Truly, I'm glad that they were heard. But we as citizens deserve the same respect from the mayor and the board of aldermen that the business owners do. That's why I'm asking for her resignation. Because she deceived you. She lied to you. And because of that, the city has plummeted into despair. And she does not deserve to lead any longer.